Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. It's Regina. So today I wanted to do a shout out to one of my YouTube buddies, and that's Matt Wall over at Paperback Junky. He has a project, an ongoing Indigogo project up, and I just wanted to give him a little shout out and see if any of you guys might be interested in checking it out and maybe making a contribution. And I did make a contribution, and I got a digital copy of his book of poetry. And yesterday, I spent a while reading. I went through about half of it, and really, really excellent poems. And they did really move me because they're about mental illness and kind of coping with that, but not in a whining sense, not in a "oh, feel sorry for me" kind of way. I really like Matt's approach. It's very much how I perceive his personality to be on just from knowing him on YouTube. I've never met him, but and we have chatted on Voxer and stuff. So I feel like I know him, and I feel like he's someone I could be friends with, on face to face. So kind of like his personality, that is what I would describe just from what I've seen on YouTube, and I hope I'm not embarrassing him, but gruff, but also sensitive. And that really came out in these poems. They have a very kind of Charles Bukowski kind of feel to them. And it's almost like you're reading a story around a certain topic. And that topic is dealing with just the frustrations. I mean, we could call it mental health, or we could just call it life, of kind of day to day living and dealing with things like, if you are having an issue with mental health and you don't have money or insurance, what do you do? And the frustration of that and how that impacts the situation you're already in. So I really did like these, and I wouldn't be endorsing them if I didn't. So I'm going to leave the link below to his Indiegogo campaign for you to check it out. And I think that it ends in a couple weeks. So, just take a look at that. So reading his poems and kind of thinking about these things just made me reflect on mental health issues that I think I'm going to say, I'm going to include myself in this just through this crisis that we're going through with this pandemic. To me, it's really underscoring my own feelings of tension and feeling unbalanced, and also what I've noticed from just some of my friends, just either reading their Facebook postings they've been expressing, and just like a general feeling of unease and malaise that is quite palpable. So I was thinking about that, and I've been doing pretty well with this whole pandemic thing. I've been coping very well, but it does feel like it started to get to me on the full moon. And I guess that wasn't a coincidence, but I felt this kind of inner turmoil and a sort of a sense of that unease that you get when you feel, and it's very hard to describe. That's why we need poets to describe it. But almost like a sense of just feeling very tense, but more like a pressure buildup. I don't know if that anyone can relate to that. And I remember when I went down to look at the full moon, kind of feeling this, and I love the full moon, and I always go out and look at the full moon and take a picture of it or whatever. But this time, and that moon was so powerful, it just had a feeling of, like, I felt very connected with the cosmos, but not in a way that felt like good, because I don't feel like we're on solid ground. Does that make sense? It's almost like there's something else going on here. And that creates feelings of stress, to say the least. And then just for me, like the whole full moon going into the electric storm in my part of the woods in Pennsylvania, we had this incredible electric storm, and I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning taking a picture of it out the window and put it on Instagram because I was like, really thought it was incredible. And I love electric storms, but so does Batilda. But the weird thing was that storm kind of released the pressure I felt from the full moon. So there's something going on with the cosmos. We have full moons, we have electric storms, and rainbows going on all at the same time. So it's so having issues where you don't feel so well, mental health has come a long way, thank God. Losing the stigma and the shame. And I know this very personally because I grew up in a family where one of the family members was severely ill. And I'm not talking about Batilda. She's got her own problems. But I know firsthand that shame and that stigma. So reading these poems, I was really just moved by how honest Matt's take on it, and humorous, funny, irreverent. What did I write here? They kind of bounce from being profound to sad to very like mundane topics, but finding meaning in that, if that makes sense, and humor, lots of humor, which I have grown to appreciate from knowing him on his channel and my conversations I've had with him. So yeah, I was thinking about poetry. I remember when I was and I love poetry. I do write poetry, not to sell my own work here while I'm doing it for Matt, but I do write poetry, and I do appreciate poetry. I remember when I was like in my late 20s and kind of going through that late 20s thing, if you know what I'm talking about, where you think, I thought things were all gonna all these problems were gonna go away, and I'd get to the point in my life where I had it really figured out, and then you get there and you're like, no, it's kind of the way it is. And I used to read a lot of self-help books, like trying to figure out how to help my, mental state. And then I remember switching from self-help to poetry. And that helped a lot. In fact, it helped a lot more than the self-help books. And I kind of stuck with poetry, especially when I discovered poets like Baudelaire and all the wonderful decadent poets. And I'm like, yes, I found my peeps, So poetry helps. Reading poems, writing poems. I mean, even, if you've never written a poem, try it. Get out that tension. Like, not to sound Pollyanna, but I really believe, for me, creativity is the key. If you can take that, whatever you're feeling, the frustration, that emotion, that pressure, where you feel unbalanced, where, and we're so afraid of expressing emotions, I think, like honestly. And that is another thing about Matt's work that I was very moved by. It's hard to be honest about these things. It's hard to say, I'm about to blow a gasket here. I need help. It's the hardest thing because we're kind of programmed to feel like that's a weakness, and it really isn't. We all have darkness in us. Every one of us. It manifests in different ways. And I think we have grown to be afraid of the darkness. This is not about Matt here. This is my own personal take on this, but I think if we can sort of make friends with the darkness, grow to love the darkness in some way, ask the darkness, what is the message here? What are you trying to tell me? Make friends with the monster under the bed. I think that is one way of dealing with it. So definitely check out Matt's book. And I was thinking about Bukowski, and I pulled up this little quote. Some people never go crazy. What truly horrible lives they must lead. So on that note, I'm going to let this go. And hopefully you're taking care of yourself. Let me know in the comments below if you like poetry. And I will see you soon in my haunted library. Bye.